morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be on this big, beautiful planet we call home. And welcome to Drinks and Daves. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, Dave, what's going on?
Not much. I am really excited about tonight's show. And hopefully we'll get, I see that the barflies have got the place packed.
They're packed. They're packed. They got the whole couch filled up. No more space. You know what's weird is I stepped out of the office on my way home and it smelled like a barbecue. We've got like some forest fires going on and it's just blowing through the bay here. And so I got some powerful stuff. I got the Freud lore. I figured that ought to compete pretty well with the look who's here. Major Rich, good to see you, sir, as always.
Rich is here, yes, exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
Well, it's good to see him. Well, I'm excited about tonight's show. Tonight, and I'll wait until our guest gets here, but I've picked a very, very special cigar just for his appearance.
Dutch Masters. Did I guess it?
Yeah, it's a cheroot.
hey, we heard that they're not that bad.
No,
so
it is a Don Pepin Garcia 20th anniversary 2023 limited edition, and shit, boy, howdy, is this a nice cigar.
Now, what makes it nice?
Well, the light is perfect. The initial hit of the smoke, and it's robust. It's coffee-like. It's not overly powerful, but it's real good. But we'll ask Tim about that when he comes in. And speaking of that, are we ready?
We got to get to it. This guy's super exciting to have on.
Bring the doorbell. Okay, bring it.
Hey, who's at the door?
Okay, so how you doing, Tim? Hey. So before we get started, Tim Swanson, the owner, partner, and the face of Cigars Daily, Cigars Daily Plus, Cigars Daily Nation on Facebook, as well as a beautiful brick-and-mortar store, which you'll see right here because we're kind of in his virtual cigar lounge today. And he's got over 200,000 subscribers. The czar of cigars, the aficionado of the ash, the sicario of the cigarro, and the filthy Viking, as he is also the owner of American Viking Cigars. And any other bad puns anybody else can come up with. Hey, Tim, how are you?
I'm good. I'm sharing this episode out on Cigars Daily's stuff as we get going here. So I just want to make sure everybody knows to come hang out with us tonight. Doing good. It's weird. You guys are in the lounge, and I'm not. I'm in my backyard, in my patio, next to all my dirty stuff. So,
well,
it's intimate that way.
Exactly, and I was telling him before we started the show that I bought these from you a while back, and I've had them in the humidor for a while, but I wanted to save it so this is my first smoke of the Don Pepin Garcia 20th anniversary 2023. The Pepin.
The fancy one.
Oh, of course, yes. Yeah. So
that's the 20th anniversary of that stuff, right? Yeah,
and it's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful.
Not a lot of guys in the cigar industry have got the reputation that dude does for outstanding leaf and amazing construction and like incredibly rich, diverse flavor. Majoric. Hello.
Well, obviously we're going to get into the whole discussion of cigars, humidors, and all this other stuff. But if you don't mind, tell us. I mean, I know that you've been in the cigar industry since I believe 2014, 2015. But tell us a little bit about yourself, because I know that you were also a minister for a while. Then, correct?
Yeah. I went to college to be a music pastor. I went to college to be a music teacher. And then halfway through, I switched to music ministry because I became really passionate about that. And I finished my 4-year degree in just like 6.5 years. So pretty damn impressive. And then got out and
there's a guy that likes to party. Right?
Yeah. Actually, I was always too distracted because for me, presenting has always been a part of my life. So I always had a band. Like, I had a band in college. They were called the Van Buren Regulars. And I was always out gigging with my band, so I got crap grades. And so, I did the church thing for a few years out of college. And I was working at this church, this small upstart church that was failing and just nosediving, tanking, and going all the wrong directions. And eventually, I had to figure out how to pay my bills. I was newly married I had a wife and 2 daughters. And so I was like, I went like 2 months without a paycheck working at this tanking church. And so then I said, yeah, I got to do something. So I got a job at a boxing gym, and I got a job at a cigar shop. And eventually the cigar shop opportunity turned into a full-time career type gig, which led to a conversation with my parents, who paid for my church music degree, where I was like, hey, I'm gonna just stop doing church ministry, and I'm gonna do tobacco instead, and which was uncomfortable.
I can imagine. But now they probably look back and they say, wow, we are so proud of you.
It was a solid 3 or 4 years of them working really. I mean, like, asking about the shop was like, how's the cigar shop doing, Tim? Like, and like, which was crazy because Cigars Daily has obviously done well. Like, Cigars Daily platform has done well. As a brand, we've done very well. We've done things that people in the cigar world hadn't done before, and it's become a huge voice, a huge lighthouse in the cigar industry. And my parents are they just hate it. They think it's the worst.
Well, I've got a quick question. So I know that when I was up at your shop a couple weeks ago, a month ago now, you had said that you had bought your first cigar at Crescent Cigar Shop in Tucson. So what was your connection to Tucson?
I grew up in Tucson.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in northeast Tucson. The disappointment was quite palpable. The anger in my dad's voice was palpable. I told him, I'm not doing church ministry. My dad worked for IBM for 25 years and then went on to be a missionary. He's a full-time missionary now. So it's like, it's still very difficult for the both of them. But now they're proud. Now they're like, they come by the shop. Anyway, I grew up in Tucson on the northeast side. And so, like, all the cigar shops that everybody knows about down there, Anthony's, Jerry's, and all the, like, the really, like, the chains in Tucson that everybody goes to, they're all over on, like, the west side of town. So I had never actually been to those. I had been to Crescent. And that was, like, the only cigar shop I went to in Tucson before I left.
Yeah. And when did you leave Tucson?
I graduated high school there in 2003. Okay, so feel old, I'm sure. I'm sure you guys graduated earlier than that.
Just a tad.
Hey. A little bit, right? 2003, I graduated. And then, much, again, to my dad's chagrin, it's a lot of disappointing news for my dad whenever I tell stories about that. I told him I was going to take a year off after high school and go do overseas vocational school before I went to college. Another thing he was avidly against. So I go... And I go.
Wait, well, what is overseas vocational school?
It's unaccredited college. It means you don't get credit for it.
All right, bold choice. Go ahead.
No, so I went to school for a semester in Scotland and a semester in India, and it was like a missionary school. So you learn more about the Bible, and it was an Assemblies of God school. So there was lots of speaking in tongues and prophesying, and like I literally had a teacher. This is crazy because as a guy who's a Christian and my doctrine is pretty what you would call Reformed doctrine. I don't do a lot of speaking in tongues. I don't do a lot of miracle stuff. It's like pretty pragmatic theology. I literally had a teacher in Scotland who was like, everybody stand up and prophesy right now. And like, it was a crazy 6 months. Like, so anyway, I had a blast doing that. And then that was when I left Tucson and I came back and went straight to college up here in Phoenix at what's now Arizona Christian University.
Well, so you graduated from Sabino then, didn't you?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Snobino.
Yeah, it's not because I went to Saguaro. So, I mean,
Saguaro?
Saguaro. Yep.
So you said you didn't do a lot of miracle stuff. So you did some miracle stuff then.
I went to a school where they taught it and forced us to do it.
You learned.
Well, but you know what? Those miracles have come forward because you know what I've noticed about what Tim can do? Tim can actually, from Phoenix, which from my house is about 100 miles or so, he can mysteriously pull money out of my
your wallet
without me seeing it, and it just vanishes. It's just amazing.
It's a lot of prayer. It's a lot of deep intercessory prayer to get that money out of people's wallets.
Yeah. So I know we're gonna get deep into the cigars, but you passed over a few things I want to find out about. The band. What did you play?
I led the band. I wrote the music. I played the guitar. I sang the song, the lyrics.
Woo! So how much hair did you have at that point?
I had some hair. I
Was it
legit.
long?
No, it was just sort of like I had the widow's peak and I had a little monk spot in the back, and it wasn't going the wrong direction.
Well, as we go forward, Tim, you'll learn that Dave, obviously Nurse Dave, Dave's a nurse, and he has this fascination for beautiful bald heads.
I was just gonna say he's got the most beautiful head in the cigar industry,
Right?
and since you know this channel, this show is not about shaving, but it's streaming on our shaving channels. I want to know what do you use to get that so smooth?
All right, so here's the deal. I use a Schick 5 razor thing.
Yeah.
And I have my wife gives me this really nice shaving cream and I put it everywhere, okay, all the way around. And then I start from the back of my ear here and I go just like this, all the way around. And I go around the back and then I go over the top and then I get the monk spot in the back and then I come down the cheeks and then I get the
Holy cow, that's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, I can do it in about 4 minutes. Because I do it incredibly fast. And every once in a while I get a slice
little cut.
Yeah. All right, so Dave shared what he's smoking. What are you smoking, Tim?
I am smoking a great cigar. From Blackbird Cigars. So this is from Jonas Santana at Blackbird. All of his cigars are named after birds, which is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And he somehow made it incredibly cool. And so the crow and the jackdaw. And he came to me, he's like, I want to do Arizona State Bird. That cactus wren. And look how cool that cigar looks. And it's just the cactus wren is this unassuming bird.
I had one yesterday on the CDN Nation on Facebook. I posted that the name is perfect because it's a small thing with a big attitude, and that's really that cigar. It really is.
Oh, yeah, dude.
It's wonderful. So I got a quick question for you. So the humidor that I have right now was really, I purchased it because of one of your reviews, and this was years ago, on the Adu, the 16-liter, the small one. And last night on your show, it was so busy I didn't get a chance to ask. But if I was, because I'm going to keep this, I think, for my singles, because as you know, in Arizona, to me, either a thermoelectric or the other type of cigar humidor is almost a necessity because of the way how hot it gets here. So if I was to go to the next, the 48, the big one, I saw a review that you did of the Antarctica, which is more of a coolador, and then of course of the New Air thermoelectric. If you were to pick one, because that's the one I'm going to use for my boxes and stuff like that. So what would you recommend?
It's really a matter of what you're looking for when it comes to humidors. Everybody's different. And so, if it was just price is no object, get a humidor, the best one there is, it's got to be the New Air. And New Air makes the best ones. They were the first ones to do it. They made the best ones. And then all the other ones that sort of seem more like copycats. Let me see, I got to find a lighter that works here. Outside of that, you got some mid-tier ones. The Arctic Star one is the one that you mentioned there. That humidor is great. That's actually the one I use in my office. Mm-hmm. And they're great because it's got a built-in humidifier. So you literally are just adding distilled water, which I love, and it just regulates it for you, regulates temperature and humidity. And then you've got the Adu and the Need one, and those are more your economy level ones. Like get your foot in the door for less than $300. You've got a refrigerated thermoelectric humidor that maintains temperature. You're going to have to mess with the humidity a little bit, but you can dial them in pretty easy. So they're a world better than a wooden desktop humidor. So there's sort of, to me, 3 levels there.
Okay. Well, the reason, because what I did is after I bought the Adu based on your review way back when, I went ahead and bought the Oasis, and and I'll tell you what, basically, I look at my phone app and it's a straight line across, and I don't even have to, unless the power goes out during the monsoon. That's the only time I have to worry about it. but I've never had a
literally
problem.
just realized. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dave. I
Sure.
just realized that his screen name is Major Rich,
Yes.
not Major Rich.
Yeah,
He'll take whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever.
there's a lot of other names. And talking about a cigar collection, I wish we would have gotten some pictures. But Rich has been a cigar smoker for millennia, and he's got cigars like Puros Indios that you can't even find anymore. They're impossible to find. And he's got cooladors. I mean, the igloo type cooladors.
He said igloo door. And by the way, you can't go wrong doing that. I mean, Tupperware, coolers, like a chest cooler. I mean, I was watching on Instagram the other day, and if you guys haven't heard, this guy's just absolutely crushing it in the cigar world. Privada Cigar Club. Have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
So this dude, he's in his warehouse, and he's just got a wall lined with igloo coolers. Like, here's a guy who's got like tens of thousands of people subscribed to his monthly box club, and he just got igloo coolers in a warehouse, and that's like his humidor setup. I was like, what the hell? Like, it's like, at what point do you build a humidor? Anyway.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, because the thing is, because I went the desktop route for a long time, and hey, Tig Lily, how you doing? And one wrong move and you can lose an entire desktop full of cigars easily. And I actually gave up cigars for a long time. And then I was cruising around the internet one time and I found this guy. What was his name? Oh, that's right, Tim Swanson, and I fell down the rabbit hole all over again. So,
so let me take a step back from the details of cigars, because first of all, I know not all of our viewers are cigar smokers, but one thing we often talk about is kind of the experience, right? When we're in our shaving hobby, it's not just shaving, but it's the experience of using all these high-end products. And when I'm drinking wine, I'm thinking about, the growing of the grapes and the harvest and all that stuff. And so you hear about how many hands touch the tobacco and the cigars before they get to your house and all the processes. Can you talk a little bit about just kind of through that process? And I assume most of the time you're very busy when you're smoking, but do you ever just kind of sit back and look at what's in your hand and kind of think about all that?
Yes. And I'll take you briefly through the process of making a cigar and what's entailed in that. But yeah, I do. I sit back and I just think about it and how crazy it is to me that somebody asked me the other day. I was sitting in the lounge and they're like, "Dude, you've been doing this for so long, and you talk to a lot of beginners and you answer the same questions: how to cut, how to light, how to take a humidor, how to do all this, that.
Yeah.
Are you still excited about it, or like you tired of it?" And I'm like, no, like I still love it. Like I still am excited about it every time. And the first question about cigars to me is, what's in it for you? Like what is that? And for me, I got it completely wrong when I started cigars, which is tough because this is not one of the right and wrong things. It's not like there's like a wrong way to enjoy cigars as long as you enjoy them. But I started doing cigars sort of as the rite of passage thing, right? Back in the day, I was 18 years old. That was the smoking age back then in the U.S. And so I got my first cigar because I turned 18. And I said, I'm 18. I could either go buy cigarettes or pornography or a cigar. And the cigar seemed sort of like the best option for a young kid who's hopeful of being a church pastor, right? So I went and got myself a cigar, and it was an Ashton Churchill that I got from Crescent. And I thought, like, rite of passage, like, this is something men do, right? And then I made myself sick to my stomach. Over the coming years, discovered that what I really liked about cigars was not that it was something that men did, but it was something I found myself doing the most when I was with my good friends. We'd get together, a couple times a month, play poker. I was in college, so I was dirt poor. There were cigars I could afford, which was pretty amazing to me. It still is amazing to me. $5 buy-ins on poker, and we'd get there, and I'd usually bum beers off other guys, and then play poker and smoke cigars. And the flavor and the community are really what comes out of cigars for the everyday smoker. Those are the two things that I see most people enjoying the most. However, it's weird because this world is so deep and so wide that you can just dive in head first. And that's what I see so many people do when they first get into cigars. You know, it's a lot of the guys who are into this for 3, 6, 9 months who are coming in and they're just like, dude, I just smoked a Sumatra and it blew my mind. And so they're like looking at all these different Sumatra wrapper leaves. And that's when you start to learn about the intricacies of how cigars are made. And so like, and to me, this is it's the secret sauce of what makes this special because, you know, just like wine and just like bourbon and scotch, it's an art form to these people. To people in Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic and Honduras and Ecuador and Brazil and Cuba as well. I mean, these people absolutely make their lives out of it. And it supports whole economies to do. And yes, 300 sets of hands are required to produce a single cigar. And that's everything from the process, which I'll give you the Polaroid snapshot of now. It starts off in the field with planting a seed. And so much about the quality of the cigar is born during that time. How much sunshine that field gets, how much cloud cover there is during the growing season, how much rainfall there is, the condition of the soil. This is why a lot of tobacco comes from Nicaragua, because there's like 18 or 20 different volcanoes in Nicaragua. What's going on, American Savage? Dude, good to see you, brother. So there's a lot of volcanoes in Nicaragua that make this nutrient-rich soil. So in that soil, with all the conditions that surround the crop season, is born a leaf with all of the potential to become incredible premium cigar tobacco. After that, they pick the leaves after it's grown, or in the case of broadleaf, they cut the stalk off and they hang the whole stalk upside down in a curing barn where they'll turn the leaf from green to brown. And then they, with a painstaking process, stack these leaves into pylones. There's like 2,000-pound stacks of tobacco. You can Google pylone online and see what these look like. But it's a natural process with absolutely no added processing or chemicals or equipment or machinery or technology or anything. Just a 2,000-pound stack of tobacco that naturally heats up to about 120 degrees, all by itself. And the chemical reaction allows the leaves they're very porous, to open up and release these impurities like ammonia. Like if you go into a curing or into a facility where the pylone is, where the fermentation is happening, it smells like a cat piss on your upper lip. It's still like just absolutely wretchedly miserable. Your eyes start watering. You're like, oh, it's beautiful, but I hate it. But they do this and they literally refine these leaves into something that they can put in a bale, age for several years. And then what you end up with is cigar shops with hundreds or thousands of different cigars in there that are all unique and different and have these flavor profiles very similar to how you like grapes and wine. This is like grapes come out with so many different types of wine. You can do the same thing with tobacco, and it's birthed this world of flavor.
Well, it's amazing because you look at like with bourbon with the rick houses, the barrels, and with scotch and the aging, and I think those of us that partake of the bourbons and the scotches, for me, what a cigar does is it literally, this is going to sound weird, but it just if you've had a rough day or whatever the case may be, it just brings everything down. You know that you've got a couple of 45 minutes to a couple of hours to just zone out, and if you have the right beverage with you, or even if it's just coffee, and those flavors are brought out by the smoke, and it's just it's amazing. Well, I want to go back for a second. Two questions. Well, actually, first of all, let me do this one first. Tig Lily had a question, and I'll show that real quick. I'll let you answer that, Tim.
Tig Lily, are there any hazelnut type flavored cigars out there? Hazelnut is a flavor note that you'll find on some flavor wheels. But there's also two segments to this. There's a flavored and infused world of cigars, which is actually flavoring added, right? Or there's just flavor notes that come with the cigar. And I don't know that as a guy who reviews cigars, I have lots of cigar reviews on the Cigars Daily channel. Hazelnut is not one that I get a ton, although nuttiness and almonds and pecans are something that I find relatively frequently with cigars. And nuttiness is a very common note to find, especially in, like, I think more mild to medium strength cigars, Habano wrappers, typically a Sumatra wrapper, a Cameroon wrapper are places where I would expect to find nutty types of notes, especially if it's got some like Honduran leaf in there. That can be pretty typical. But more like mild to medium strength cigars you'll find some features like that.
Well, that's cool because Tig Lily happens to be a very, very close relative of mine, namely my wife. So if I can get her into cigars, that just makes it better. So back to my question. So you had mentioned all the different locations and stuff. So I want to bring up Cuba, and I know that's one thing. So Cuba is one. The other is since Cuba and Puerto Rico are so close. I'm half Puerto Rican. So is there any cigars that come out of Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Okay.
There are. But I always get Puerto Rico and Costa Rica mixed up.
Yeah, Puerto Rico is just that little island just to the east of where San Juan is, and the rum, all the good rum comes out of Puerto Rico. Well, I think it does.
Mine comes out of Total Wine, Dave.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, I'm looking them up right now. Don Collins is a brand, I guess, comes out of Puerto Rico. I think Costa Rica is where some cigars like Atabey comes out of there. But yeah, I mean, so basically where you're going to find cigars being made is in the sort of temperate zone near the equator where it's nice and humid and moist and it's very easy for the tobacco to grow. Tobacco is actually a weed. Technically classified as a weed, Tobackianus nicotium or Nicotium tobackianus is what the whatever classification of it is, but it's technically a weed, and so it grows unbelievably fast. Okay, they plant it in like I think November, and then they are harvesting it in like February or March, I believe, and so incredibly fast to grow the crops down there. But also one of these parts of the world that gets devastated by hurricanes. So people in the cigar world are always watching the news and we're like, where the hurricane goes and it dog legs, out to the ocean or goes, just past Nicaragua, and we're like, oh, that stuff can destroy crops fast.
Well, okay, so so back to the, obviously since the embargo back in Kennedy's day, the Cuban cigar has almost got to this mysticism level. But I know that you've talked about on your show a lot of times that having a cigar directly from Cuba and the quality of it, has that been kind of diluted because a lot of these people left Cuba and have started up in other locations?
I'll ask you, I'll give my diatribe about this, but I'd rather converse with you guys about it. Sure. Nurse Dave, what is your perception of Cuban cigars? Because you're not as big of a cigar guy, right?
Well, I don't buy as many as Dave does, but I've actually had direct Cubans, and I didn't see any difference. I wasn't impressed, but it's supposed to be, right? Those are the best. The best of the best is Cohiba because they're made for.
Why? Why would you think that is? Why would they be the best? I mean, other than the fact that they're supposed to.
Why would they be? I would imagine it's climate.
Is it marketing? They're the hardest to get.
Well, so the climate. So people talk about, so the climate, is no different than it is in Nicaragua. No different than it is in the Dominican Republic. In fact, the tobacco, believe it or not, is not indigenous to Cuba. There was a tribe of Indians called the Arawak Indians, first brought tobacco seeds from the Dominican Republic to Cuba and grew them there. And then it was the Tainos who really cultivated the tobacco. And they would literally take tobacco leaves, roll them up into tobacco straws, jam them up their nostrils, and then light them and snort them as part of their
Okay,
hold on,
real quick, Dave, for the convention in Vegas that we're going to in April.
We're doing it.
We're going to have to do that as an activity.
We need
100%. If you walk
Rancero's up the nose.
tobacco leaves jammed up your nose on fire, everyone will know you're top tier nose stuff more than anybody else.
Right.
But
Tim, you mentioned that it had a volcanic soil is the key to it, but volcanic soil is also in Napa, where some of the best wine come from, and I think the same thing with coffee, right? That they're growing on hillside.
Yeah.
So that's interesting all across the board that it like must concentrate the flavors in any natural product because it's hard to.
I mean, it's agriculture, right? The nature of the soil is so important. That's why with anything, corn, wheat, everything like that, they're going to be rotating crops to try to maintain the integrity of the soil. American Sabbath says Cubans are all hype and $1 billion counterfeit industry, but I still get some in the La Casa de Habanos in Cozumel each year. Yeah, the soil is incredibly important, and that's what brings me back to sort of the Cubans. So if I can lay out what I've learned about Cubans, or at least what people say about Cubans, the Cuban purists, and there is a whole world of these people out there, the purists who say that Cubans are the best, they're the only, they're the brightest. They talk about the soil in Cuba. And, it's zinc rich or something like that. It's the nutrients in the soil. It's so very good, they just make the best cigars in the world. Which you could argue against. Cuba's an island. So they've got a limited amount of land to grow on. They grow in the Pinar del Rio Valley, a lot of tobacco there, and a number of other places. And I would text my wife. Doing a podcast like I told you about. There we go.
No, we'll wait. What's for dinner, Tim?
I already had to make my own dinner. Apparently, I'm not going to be home. So you've got this soil that they grow on every year. It's been so back all the way up to the embargo. The embargo gets signed, and the government says communism, and when they declare communism, they now own everything. They own the name, the fields, the factories, the farms. They own the whole kit and caboodle. And so at that point, two things happen. A, yes, one of you guys mentioned, a lot of the great cigar makers left. In fact, they would say, one of the famous ones, Benji Menendez, who owned H. Upmann cigars, Monte Cristo cigars, basically told Castro, you can have it. You can have it all. Just let me leave. And he's also the same guy who, by the way, if you've heard the story that Kennedy bought a bunch of cigars for himself before he signed the embargo, he bought them from Benji Menendez. They were H. Upmann number 4s, as the story goes. And he bought them, and as soon as he owned them, he signed the embargo. And so Benji Menendez sells those to Kennedy, goes to Castro, says, you can have the names, H. Upmann and Monte Cristo, and I'll leave. And so, yeah, all these cigar makers leave with pockets filled with tobacco seeds. They go across the ocean to the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua and basically start over from scratch. Wow. But the big issue with Cuban cigars is this. It's now a government product. Like, name one government product in the world that you're like, no, that's the best.
That's right.
A good point.
Low competition.
Even the crop is the one that the government produces that's got the best quality. I mean,
good point.
Arguably, Cuba has very, very good medicine. But with cigars, I don't know. I smoke Cuban cigars, and I like some of them very much, but I don't see them as being a cut above the rest.
Here's a question from PB, one of our regulars. I'll let you answer that, too.
Hold on. Get the whole question there. There you go.
Okay.
Is the torpedo shape, as in the Padron 1964 Aniversario Maduro series, perceived as more elegant than a stubby? Any taste advantage? Do you guys smoke torpedoes at all?
Well, just the ones that the little ones that I've purchased through you, like that. Because I finally learned how to cut a torpedo.
Yeah, the Olivia Series V, the what is the new one? The Maduro?
Not the 135, right?
No. It's tapered on both ends. That's the one I'm smoking to.
Yeah. That looks like the figurado, what they call it.
Yeah, that's sexy as hell, Tim.
Yeah, and hard to roll. I mean, there's extra craftsmanship in there. The torpedo is. I mean, if you ask different aficionados, maybe someone would tell you that like the torpedo is it's one of these things, pinky's up here. No, I think it's a matter of preference and mouthfeel, and like some people just like a torpedo. I don't really want anything poking me in the back of the throat, so I'm like good with a regular cap.
But would the logic be that it's concentrating the flavors as it gets more narrow?
I mean, yeah, and the same thing would happen if you did a regular round cap and did a cigar punch instead of a straight cut.
True, yeah.
Or a similar thing would happen. I would say probably so with a torpedo. And, with different shapes and sizes of cigars, the flavor tends to differ a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and Rich has a point that, as you mentioned, it's harder to roll some of these shapes, and so you get the more experienced rollers. So would there be potentially more consistency and a better quality roll on the fancier shapes?
Probably could argue that. I mean, when you get down to the sizes like your figurado there, specifically the Solomon size is the one I hear about this the most. Solomon is almost just like that figurado we're talking about, Dave, except at one end it's a torpedo, and at the other end it comes to a bulb before it tapers off into like a little, almost a nipple. Okay, it's a very odd looking cigar. It was actually born in a little town called Dusseldorf, Germany. I love telling people. Yeah, that. Can you take that out of the cellophane? So So that's a very special shape of cigar. Most factories only have a handful of people that can roll that shape, and they'll typically be the best rollers. Now you might argue that you're going to get a bit of a better roll that way, but also those, just like that, those figurados and box press cigars and those special shapes, because they're not a straight. This is what you call, what I'm smoking, a parejo. It doesn't change its ring gauge at any time. So it's very easy for it to burn. But if the ring gauge changes, if the shape size changes, if it's box pressed, it can make it hard for it to burn straight. So you tend to have some burn issues there. And so those other sizes can be problematic just for, regular.
Well, plus, as we all know, the best cigars are rolled on the thighs of virgins. And you think once they're experienced like that, they're probably not virgins anymore.
Well, finding virgins these days is hard to do.
So here, you almost address this a little bit. The box pressed, does that change the taste at all? I know, you mentioned too about the mouthfeel and all that. I like the feel of a box press in my hand. So just in terms of experience, it's more enjoyable because of that. But flavor changes?
Yes, and it decidedly so. It would be it would be a challenge for a blender to roll a round cigar and then make that cigar box press and make it taste the same. And here's why. Typically with rolling, they roll in rolling pairs. It's two people, okay? First of all, there's the bunchero. That's the job title, bunchero. They make the bunch, the filler leaves, and they make them in their hand. And then they roll that up into a binder leaf. And that gets pressed typically into a perfectly round cylinder like this. That's the bunchero. Right. Then the rollero, after the press, gets them back and just puts the wrapper leaf on in the cap. Okay? And so that's how you make a round cigar, most parejos like this. A box press cigar is made a little bit differently. They have to underfill them. They put fewer filler leaves in there because when they put in the wrapper and the binder, or the filler and the binder, they then put the wrapper on and then press it into that squared shape with the wrapper on. So it's pressed with the wrapper where a round parejo isn't, and it doesn't have as much filler in it. So you can find cigars like the Asylum Cigars makes one called the Medulla and the Oblongata, which are the same blend, round parejo and box press, but they taste very different. Camacho Cigars makes their Connecticut and their Corojo in Ecuador in a round parejo and in a box press Medulla. You can taste the difference there. Yes.
Great.
Dave and I talk about this a lot about, because Dave is really into wines and stuff like that. But I found that with cigars over time, you get the same type of where you can taste the different notes, and stuff like that. And I know a lot of times Dave will say I'm not there yet because I'll do a review through the journal, and this thing, by the way, if you guys are cigar smokers, you haven't got this journal from Tim, you need to. But it through the retrohale and everything else, you can get a whole bunch of different flavor notes that way.
Now, Nurse Dave, when you something was wrong with his when you're doing the wine, how much do your olfactory senses play into the tasting of the wine? It's a big part of it.
A ton, yeah.
It has to be, right?
Right.
But how? Like, because with smoke, with the retrohale,
well, see that the retrohale, I talked to Dave about this just recently, is that I've tried it a few times, and because I haven't learned how to do it, it's unpleasant. Like the acidity hits back there, and I'm like, no, but I can get an explosion of different flavor notes, in that brief second where it's hitting the back of my palate there. So I got to work on that because I told him it seems like there's 75% of the flavors that I'm not getting right now by not doing that.
The secret to retrohaling, I think, is blowing most of the smoke out of your mouth, and maybe the last 10 or 15% you retrohale.
I'll try that off camera.
Do that because, truthfully, the smoke coming through a cigar is actually, it shouldn't be acidic. It should be alkaline because it's unprocessed. And
either way, it when it fills your sinuses, it's not
hard.
fun.
Yeah, it hits like a brick, right? Like a brick.
But there's a key there. If you eat sushi and you like wasabi, retrohaling is easy.
Yeah,
it just opens up the passages. Here's another question from our buddy BP.
The leaf by Oscar, Connecticut looks like it was rolled by Cheech and Chong, but it is highly regarded. Correct? Yeah, and it looks like that because of the packaging. Dave, you held up that Solomon a bit ago, and it had cellophane on it, right? And most cigars come with that cellophane. I just emptied my ashtray and threw all my cellophane away, but most cigars come with that cellophane. It's a very good thing. It protects your cigars, keep them safe. You should keep cigars in cellophane. Oscar Valderez just did something different with the leaf by Oscar. He, instead of putting cellophane around the cigar, he wrapped it in a whole tobacco leaf. So if you take that off, there's a regular, round, normal-looking Parejo cigar underneath, and that's all leaf by Oscar is. It's just a tobacco leaf instead of.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about cigar sizes for a second, because I agree with you. To me, based on time, what you've got going on, and everything else, to me the Robusto and the Toro are the two best sizes for me. And I know that that's a wide open thing, depending on what people like.
Bro. But it's a conversation for the ages. Dave, Nurse Dave, what size are you smoking? You said you're smoking the Figurado, right?
Right, but normally I buy Turo, and I remember that I thought it was the smaller the ring gauge, kind of the more intense flavor because there's more wrapper leaf to filler ratio, right? But you feel like kind of a girl if you're smoking a little thin one.
A little tiny Lancero with your little pink
right,
like
Viking sleigh.
that and your little iced cocktail and
your
daiquiri. It has to be a daiquiri.
Yeah. No, I mean that what you just said is something I've heard cigar geeks say millions of times. And it's interesting because I was a cigar geek as I got into the industry, and now my friends are cigar makers, and I've learned a lot from them. So, first of all, wrapper to filler ratio. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a sense where as you thin out the ring gauge, it changes that, which is good in a cigar that's blended for the wrapper to be the feature of the flavor. And maybe even most cigars are that way, but not all of them. For some cigars, the binder is the feature of the flavor. We talked about this last night on Cigars Daily Live, but like the Diesel Whiskey Row is a series of cigars where the binder leaf is aged in a rabbit hole bourbon barrel or sherry cask barrel sometimes. So that binder leaf really adds a major contribution to the flavor. Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust has made Stillwell Star, where the fillers are these aromatic pipe tobaccos. or have these aromatic pipe tobaccos within the filler leaves. And so there's definitely ways to feature things other than the wrapper leaf. But when it comes to sizes, in America, the two most popular sizes are Robusto and Toro. And, at the Cigars Daily HQ, when we put cigars in our humidor there, literally, it's interesting because people assume that it's like some sort of big box type place, and it's just not. We're like a little brick and mortar shop, and so we are limited on space. So when we first, started filling the humidor, my partner and I talked about it, and I told him, I said, I want to make sure that we standardize this. We're basically just going to carry everything in a Robusto and Toro and not a lot of other sizes, unless it's wildly popular, like the Melanio, the Nurse Davis smoking, or the Rose of Sharon and the Jacob's Ladder, like the Solomon, the Barber Dave has. Other than that, we're just going to carry Robusto and Toro and not apologize for not having the Torpedo and not having the Churchill and not having all these other stuff.
So I'm curious because
Jerry always has to cause controversy.
I do also smoke a pipe, and I've had this question for quite a while about, like, I enjoy the smell of pipe tobacco burning more than a cigar, but a cigar is so much easier to smoke than a pipe. And I've always wondered, why don't they make cigars with pipe tobacco? And you just mentioned a brand that does that.
There are now two lines of cigars that do this, and maybe it's growing, maybe it isn't. I don't know, but I'll lend you whatever I got on that. Stillwell Star from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. They're all 6 or 6 1/4 by 52, all of them, basically a Toro size. And there's 4 different blends, all of them done with this very famous pipe tobacco guy that Steve Saka worked with. And then Deadwood cigars from Drew Estate also use aromatic tobacco, but some of them have sweet tips on them, and so I haven't smoked through all those. Here's the problem with pipes. Like, pipes are not as popular as they used to be, and nowhere near as popular as premium cigars. And so yeah.
So why don't more people do that? Is that if you're into cigars, you're just into cigars, and people aren't interested in pipe tobacco?
I don't know if there's just not as much pipe tobacco as there used to be, or what. But I was talking with a buddy of mine who's a broker, and he's a broker for different cigar brands. He reps a bunch of different brands and one pipe tobacco company, and he told me the numbers back in the early to mid 2000s, basically 2000 to maybe 2010. He told me how many thousands of pounds of pipe tobacco he was selling every month in Phoenix. Thousands of pounds, and that dropped down to now less than a few hundred pounds a month in Phoenix. I just don't think there's as much in pipes as there is in cigars, because cigars are expanding even now, and have been sort of on and off for the last 20 plus years.
Well, here's that one thing that you were talking about, Tim, the Boxer Grail, the diesel.
Oh yeah,
and once
again,
again,
let's talk about your business a little bit.
Well, before we do that real quick, I think we'd be remiss, since we're talking about cigars, is tell us, aside from your business, you can lead into it with Cigars Daily HQ, but American Viking Cigars, because that's you, that's your brand, that's 100% you. So if you could talk a little bit about them too.
Pipe dream. I always liked. I mean, ever since I got into cigars, I've been fascinated by it. And before I ever got into the cigar industry, I would roll cigars. I went to this website where I could buy long filler tobacco, and I'd watch YouTube videos on how to roll cigars. Even went to Playa del Carmen, where I paid a guy to show me sort of how to roll a cigar, and he mostly just made fun of me in Spanish while I failed to roll a cigar. But I even started a club up in Phoenix, a cigar rolling club. And me and a handful of guys, we just get together like a couple times a month and just practice rolling cigars together. It was a lot of fun. And I would even then print on my printer cigar bands, and I would tape them to my cigars, because I was like, the idea of having my own brand like appealed to me so much. Now I realize that that owning a cigar brand means you just get to take one up the ass all the time, and it's such a pain and a logistical nightmare that I wouldn't recommend it to a simple living soul anywhere for any reason ever. So being a retailer is 1,000 times easier.
That sounds great. So, well, then one of the questions I was going to have talking about the industries, what do you think? It seems like there's an explosion of brands right now, and it doesn't seem like that's sustainable. Why are so many people thinking they can get into it and be more successful than what's already out there?
So, well, is it saturated? Sure, but not like other things are saturated. I mean, shit. People, can I cuss you? I can't cuss you.
Yeah.
People still start bands and they still try to put out albums thinking they're going to sell albums. I mean, think about how saturated that is. People still start clothing companies. I mean, my God, if I had $1 for every clothing company that was out there, I'd be a rich man. So I think the issue with cigars and the reason that it's appealing is the cost of entry is relatively low. You know, it's for under $20,000, you could conceivably start a cigar brand. Now, how successful you'd be with that, I don't know. It's the work of starting a cigar brand is a mind-numbing amount of work, blending and creating the packaging, and then going through getting the cigars rolled with a factory who's already trying to just roll enough cigars for themselves. You got to like wiggle your way in there to get your cigars rolled. So that's a trouble. Getting the boxes made, getting the bands made, that's trouble. All that stuff is really hard. Then once the cigar gets to market, you got a problem. You have to separate yourself, figure out how you stand out, be different, and be ultra relevant really as quickly as you can. And it's changed so much in how you do that. So it's way harder to do now. And at the Cigars Daily HQ, because our reach is wide, right? Because of the number of subscribers we have, a lot of boutique brands have seen our videos and they really want to work with Cigars Daily. They want the cigars on the channel because we can tell, a lot of people about their cigars. But that's just not quite the way that it works.
Well, so boutique, I guess what Tig Lily's asking is it more artisan now? So that would be your boutique bands, correct?
Yeah, it's like small batch bourbon, right? Or craft beer. There's a million craft beer startups. But the difference is this. The beer industry is huge. So you could conceivably start up a craft beer company and grow it and sell that animal like Four Peaks did here in Phoenix. Four Peaks Brewery started off as a little craft brewery, grew, and then sold to Anheuser-Busch.
Wow.
And that was a big win. Growing a cigar brand, the cigar industry is just so small, it's so niche that growing a brand and selling that brand to a bigger brand, the odds of that happening are so remarkably small that it's almost not worth considering. The average startup cigar brand doesn't really last more than 18 months.
So
that's the average death.
So your big companies, the ones that will always be here, Arturo Fuente, Davidoff, so they don't go out and acquire these smaller companies, or do they?
Some do, some don't. You've got your big conglomerates like Scandinavian Tobacco Group, okay? They own General Cigar and Forged Cigar, which are their distribution arms. General Cigar distributes, dear God, Macanudo, CAO, Hoya de Monterrey, Punch Cigars, and a bunch of other stuff. Forged distributes Diesel, Partagas, La Gloria Cubana, Room 101 cigars. Now, and then there's another one, Altadis. Altadis sells Romeo y Julieta, Monte Cristo, H. Upmann, Henry Clay. These are all big heritage brands. But these big conglomerates are buying smaller brands. So Room 101 got purchased by STG. Alec Bradley Cigars just got purchased by STG. That was a $72 million purchase. They weren't really like one of these little chicken scrap brands. They're big.
Well, that brings up a good point because, with the hobby with the hobby that we're in, like shaving supplies, barber supplies, stuff like that, you see a lot of the same thing happening, but you do have, these flash in the pans that come out, and if you don't buy, and I wonder if it's the same in the cigars, so you have a small boutique company, let's say that you review, that you really like, And when you say, I know a lot of people argue, oh, he's just marketing the cigars, but when you say you need to jump on these now, there is a good chance that they won't be around tomorrow. And the one I know he's going to bring them back out again eventually, but is the wasabi. You know, I know you've been waiting for that for a while, as a lot of us have been, and you just don't know. So is it a good idea to buy the cigar when you can?
You're asking the dude that owns a cigar shop if it's a good idea to buy the cigar. I was thinking that
you can. Yeah, it's from the guy that sells the things, like, don't listen to me about it. If it's a limited edition thing, like, yeah, you want to get some to have on hand, but like, I hate limited edition cigars for exactly that reason. It's a rush to get them if you can get them, and then once you get them, you better not love them, because when you smoke through them, they'll be gone. You don't have them anymore. So I personally prefer cigars that, to me, the best bet is this: a regular production cigar that's made all the time, reliably available. I can get it. You can get it anytime. We'll all be great friends. And I can say to people what I say at the till at the Cigars Daily HQ: smoke these and come see me when you're done.
Yeah.
You know? That's what I want to say to people.
So here's a question that'll test your historical knowledge, I think. This is from Major Rich. So he used to love Puros Indios when they were a tour pure. Are there any affordable Puros still available?
Yes, for sure. Puros there's a few definitions of the word puro. Puro in Latin America is typically the word for cigar. So that's what they call it, it's puro. But we call a puro something that is made purely out of a leaf from one country. A Nicaraguan puro is a cigar with just Nicaraguan leaves in the cigar. And there's only one puro that jumps into my mind right now, and that's the Diesel Esteli puro. The whole cigar is made out of leaf that comes from just one growing region of Nicaragua, and that's Esteli. Also, and this, if you want an affordable one, here it is. Chillin Moose, Bull Moose, Maduro is a Nicaraguan puro that's like $6 or $7.
Wow.
So yeah, they are still making it.
So let's talk about your business a little bit now. Now that we spent the whole time, let's talk about the transition from just brick and mortar to online sales, and then what social media did for you, or how did you make that transition?
It wasn't really a transition,
no,
as much as it was I backed into that one. You know, the internet is an interesting place because retailers hate the internet, and understandably so. I mean, on the internet, it's typically affordable. It's very convenient. It ships right to you. And so brick and mortar shops are always complaining about the online guys. Oh, I can't compete with these guys. They sell the cigars too affordably. Now, my shop, I'm not a steep discounter. I don't like run the price way down and do the kinds of things that a lot of guys do. I think there's lots of ways to provide value. But a lot of cigar makers won't sell to an online only company. And I got punched in the nuts right when I first started, because I called a guy. I was like, yeah, man, I want to open an account with you guys, and I'm going to do a YouTube thing. And it was literally the plan from the start. And he was like, well, we're not going to sell to an online retailer. And I was like, oh, no, we're a brick and mortar with an online presence. And so literally the lounge that's your guys' backdrop, we built the lounge initially because we had to. Like, you have to have a brick and mortar shop. You have to be a brick and mortar shop with an online presence, not an online company with a brick and mortar shop, right?
Oh, okay.
Like, it has to sort of be framed up for these people to be willing to work with you. And and I get that, because to them, the brick and mortar cigar shop is the backbone of the cigar world. It's just becoming harder and harder of a business model to keep alive, because these days you have to have an X factor. You have to have a cigar shop with a lounge and maybe beer and wine at the very least to have people come in, or you got to do the online thing. I even know one shop that's got a gun range attached to it. There's lots of different ways to make it, sort of relevant, but the brick and mortar lounge isn't working as much. But for me, sort of working into this was, I worked for another company before Cigars Daily, where literally I was charged with making their e-commerce site profitable. And this company doesn't even exist anymore. And the manager of the company said, you need to make this profitable. I was like, okay. And I literally discovered there was no way to market cigars. no one will take your ad money. You keep like it's tobacco. And so I came back and I said to the manager, I said, we really got two options here. From what I can tell, we can advertise on pornography websites because they'll take our ad money, or we can try this social media thing. And I think I got an idea for like a YouTube channel type thing. And the manager told me, he's like, no, social media, that's stupid. I don't want to do that. And I said, just let me try it. Just let me try. And he's like, all right, fine. So I tried it, and it blew up in a really successful way, so much so that my father-in-law, who's now my business partner, actually pitched Cigars Daily to me. So that's sort of how we ended up at Cigars Daily, me and my family and my father-in-law as partners.
Well, and we'd be remiss, because those of us that watch your live shows and are part of the Cigar Daily Nation, you have, as a business owner and a former other business owner, staff makes the difference. And when you talk about, number one, it's a family, so the family's involved, but then you've got Billy and you've got Terrence and you've got the Legata Destroyer. I forgot his name for a second.
Ryan Destroyer.
Right. It just seems that it's just such a cohesive group, and they all have the passion for the cigars. You can see that come out on your shows.
Yeah, they're incredible people, and we're unbelievably fortunate to have them. Spencer Shave says, is there really not much of a difference in single filtered, triple filtered, quad filtered butane, or is butane just butane? What kind of butane do you guys do? You have a can near you?
I have the jet. I have the jet line, and then I have two. I have one.
What do you fill it with?
One off brand, and I have one.
This is the can of Lotus butane. It says 0 impurities, made in England. Yeah, I don't like. Some people swear by their butane, and I imagine that's based on their experience. They used one butane, and their lighter was flickering and farting out and all this stuff, and then they try another butane, and the lighter works perfectly, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this butane's that much better." So maybe, personally, I don't care. I think all butane works. The brands I work with are the ones that do a really good job, and so I use their butane equally, and I'll use one can of butane to fill a lighter one time and another can another time. I have no problem.
Yeah. So here, Tom Selleck smokes Castro's flavored Robustos from Cuba's. What is it? Violeta? Do you know how to say that? I don't know.
Vuelta
Abajo. What would you sell us if we walked in asking for something like this? PB wants to be like Tom Selleck. First, you need the helicopter.
And you need the mustache.
And then what cigar does he need?
Again, it goes back to Cubans, right? Castro's favored Cohiba Robusto. Well, I could easily point you to Cohiba, which is now very different, because the Cohibas you get in America are obviously not Cubans. They're they're a completely separate company that's actually a competitor of Cuban Cohiba. But if I was trying to get you toward a flavor, I'd authentically be trying to point you toward a cigar with a Cuban-esque flavor. Drew Estate makes a cigar called the Herrera Esteli. Willie Herrera, who blends for Drew Estate, he worked to make this cigar, the Herrera Esteli, as a very Cuban-esque cigar. If you want a cigar that truly rings of that Cuban Cohiba flavor, there is a cigar called Atabey, Atabey, Atabey. They're insanely expensive, but if you want a good dead ringer for a Cuban Cohiba flavor, that one to me is it.
Okay, so we'd be remiss also because our show always circles around to food. So let's talk about food pairing with your cigar.
That dovetails to what I want to ask. So answer this first. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm probably a crap guest for this. I'm a eat to live guy, not a live to eat guy. My diet is expressly tailored for my gut health and my mental health. I really only eat things that contribute to the well-being of those two things. So,
because you've lost a lot of weight recently, right? I remember you mentioning that, right?
Yeah, a few years ago, I ended up in the hospital with a stomach filled with ulcers, and my stomach lining was inflamed, and the doctors were like, "Bro, we think you have cancer." Like,
Oh,
this doesn't happen to people. And I didn't have cancer, but they're like, you got to change your lifestyle. Something about your stress level. you guys both business owners know what that's about. Your stress level, how much are you drinking? And so I almost basically stopped drinking almost entirely. I'll have a scotch a couple times a month. And now what I eat is chicken, beef, pork, fish, vegetables, fruits. I eat quite a bit of dairy. I like steak a lot. Tonight I had a bunch of spaghetti squash and with shredded chicken and some cheese and some Greek yogurt on it.
Well, because I was going to say one thing I was kind of disappointed in, Tim, is we saw a background in one of your shows. Maybe it was your office, but the back wall had a lot of bottles.
I know.
It looked like bourbon.
I'm a hypocrite. I'm a giant.
Are you a bourbon guy? Because you just mentioned scotch, and I got hopeful.
So here's the thing. A lot of people get into cigars and start off with like infused stuff and kind of work their way into the traditional non-infused Connecticut mild stuff and then go to the bold stuff like Maduros like this. And I think with bourbon, it's a similar thing. You get in with the sweetness of bourbons. There's a whole world to explore there.
Mm-hmm.
People eventually tend to gravitate over time towards scotches.
If there's
At the point that I'm at, I'm a scotch guy.
When your balls drop, you switch to scotch.
I switched to scotch. And now
right.
a nice Duncan Taylor 18-year is my cream of the crop. If I could have any one thing, it would be that.
All righty. So you've also mentioned starting with infused cigars, and you use the term premium cigars a lot. Now, in the wine industry, it's like something like 95% of the bottles of wine sold are under $16 or something like that, which I can't imagine drinking that kind of stuff. But in the cigar industry, I always thought almost everything is hand-rolled premium, but is there a huge section of this that's like machine-made cheap crap, and the stuff we're smoking is the minority?
No. Well, yes, I should say. If you talk about cigars in broad strokes as like the everything that says cigars on the packaging, which would include premium handmade cigars, which is 99.9% of everything in my human world, and all the crap they sell at gas stations, then yeah, most of them are machine made because the gas station cigars sell, a lot more, and they're typically real junk in my opinion. But it's the premium cigar world is very different, and now we actually have a legal definition that separates premium cigars from cigars. And so in order for it to be a premium cigar, it has to be 50% long filler by volume, made entirely of leaf, so no like paper amalgamations like you see on a lot of the gas station stuff. It has to have no machinery involved in making it other than simple tools. 100% leaf wrapper, 100% leaf binder, and no additional flavors.
Right. So then, but before we end up wrapping this up, what is Cigars Daily? Is there something in your future you're headed towards? What's down the road?
Never happy with where I'm at.
Well, that's sad.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm absolutely happy with where I'm at. I'm never content with where I'm at. And to speak to it, any type of success a person gains doesn't guarantee happiness. And I think probably my big takeaway from doing Cigars Daily, and I worried about this a lot in year 2 and 3, was, do I have what it takes to be a successful person? You see a lot of these people who do well in their lives, and down the road, they eventually are just unhappy. You should take that down. You should take that off. You should take that out of your comments. You should take that off. I don't like the channel as a whole.
Gone.
For me, it was like a lot of these people end up strung out. People make profound amounts of money, and they just end up being drug addicts, or they're totally unhappy, bitter douchebags. And so in year 2 and 3, for me, there was a big challenge of like, can I do this and also strike a level of satisfaction and peace with my life and who I am, a satisfaction and peace that transcends Cigars Daily or no Cigars Daily. And the last year and a half has been really about that for me personally. So am I happy with Cigars Daily? Emphatically, yes. Am I content? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I wish I was 10 times better at this than I am. And so my days are filled with figuring out how to be that. And,
Wow.
As far as what Cigars Daily is, I couldn't be more proud uh, of what we've created. I tell people this all the time. And Barbara Dave, I think when you were at the shop, I told you, I might have mentioned this to you. I tell people all the time, I'm like, people use synergy as this weird like buzzword that corporations use, and it's a crappy word because it doesn't really mean anything, but I think it's a beautiful word because synergy is the marriage of passion and productivity. And that's what Cigars Daily is for me. The passion side of it is creating educational content, the best damn cigar content online. And we do that in exchange to offer people the best value in cigars that we can. And so the fact that I get to do both sides of that is unbelievable.
And I must say, you push out the content. I'm always impressed, even if it's a short. It seems like many times a week there's new content. So you're putting the work into it for sure.
Yes, I have got a very specifically dialed in formula for what and how I put out in terms of content. And yes, it has to be done. The show must go on. Often there are many days where I'll get to the shop and say, okay, today I just have to make one video. And it just has to be the best thing to come out in cigars tomorrow. And so as long as I can do that, I can do my job.
Yeah.
Thank
awesome.
you.
All right. Any last questions, Dave?
Yeah, let's take some questions from the barflies in the lounge if they've got and everything. But no, and I'll tell you what, your content and everything, quite frankly, has reignited my passion for cigars. And what I see when you're talking about synergy is I see the comparisons between the hobbies. In other words, we're into shaving gear and shaving stuff. I mean, how many people need 300 straight razors? Nobody needs it. That's like, why do you have 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 cigars? You don't need it, but it's something that's passionate. And when you think about all the different hobbies you can have, there are so many worse things that we all could be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious, when you shifted into cigars as a profession, did that change the way you enjoyed them at all? I'm imagining it did, just the fact that you have access to everything under the sun now.
Yeah, I went from not really knowing anything about my palate and what I liked. I just knew I liked a cigar or didn't like, to sort of getting a more of an understanding and depth of appreciation for the flavor profiles. And then the birth of understanding the cigar industry and what goes into crafting a cigar and maintaining the integrity of a blend over multiple crop years and over lots of different circumstances. Talk about mind bending. And now when I smoke cigars, I smoke a few different types of cigars. I smoke cigar, like when I get to the shop in the morning, it's typically 6:30 a.m. I'm just going to light up something I really want to smoke. So I'll smoke things I enjoy. I smoke things that I have to smoke because I'm trying a new brand. I'm checking out a new blend. I'm seeing if it's going to work. Then I'll smoke cigars specifically for videos. And that's where I'm thinking about, who is this cigar for? And opinions on fumas. I want to get to that in a second. Who is this cigar for? Who is it relevant to? And how can I communicate to them the value of this cigar and its worth? And so there's very different types of cigars I like, cigars I have to smoke. I still like them, but I have to smoke them. Cigars I want to communicate to people about. And then when I get home in the evening, I'll typically have a cigar that I just enjoy as well and read a book or something like that. And fumas are great. Fumas are outstanding. You guys see these like bundled cigars that come out, Brick House Fumas. You can only get those, I think, at one place. They're great. Cheap, affordable cigars, more basic in terms of flavor, but because they're affordable, they're reliably good, and you can smoke a lot of them.
I haven't heard this term. What is Fumas? Is that a brand?
Fumas are the name Fuma is actually a term that you'll hear more when it comes to the blending. A Fuma is typically referred to as one type of leaf from a blend, because this blend here is probably, maybe three different types of leaves in the filler, a different type of leaf for the binder, and a different type of leaf for the wrapper. So 4 or 5 different types of leaves in the blend. If you pick out one of those leaves, you can roll it up into a Fuma, and taste what just that single leaf contributes to the blend in terms of flavor. So you might roll up all 5 different leaves and see what they do independently, and then you're like, ooh, this Ligero is really sweet. So I want to use a little bit more of this Ligero in the center of the blend, and like that's how they put the blend together. I've heard them referred to in different names down in Nicaragua as like churritos or something like that when they roll up a single leaf. But that's the idea of a fuma. It's typically one type of leaf. But now it's kind of a buzzword that they put on packaging to sell bundled cigars, and that's what the brick house fumas are. It's just like they're just a cheaper version of the brick house.
Real quick before we get to Pantea's question, the one thing I will say, Tim, and I don't want to embarrass you by saying this, but every single cigar that you have recommended on your content, most of them I have tried, and there's never been a steer wrong. And I think the reason for that is you get to know you get to know your audience, number one, because I notice on your shows, like you say, the people in the audience are the co-hosts. So they'll ask questions, and then you'll form kind of an offhanded relationship with that person as to what they smoke. And I know that you peruse CD Nation on Facebook all the time to see what people are smoking and what they're doing. So my question is the value, because we have this argument, Dave and I have this argument about value, and when I'm doing, like on my shave channel, when I'm doing reviews about a shaving soap that's $60, you know, people say, what the hell do you want to spend $60 on a soap? So I very rarely talk about price, because the price is in the beholder's hand. So if I see a $40 cigar that I like, that I love, it doesn't matter what it costs, because it gave me that 2 hours of enjoyment that I wanted. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And, you know, yeah, I try not to put the assumption on price for people, because I'll ask people when they come in, I ask them, I'm like, about how much do you want to spend on a cigar? Because to me, if I'm going to recommend a cigar, I'm shooting for about $8. Because to me, there's great value in $8 cigars. They're really good. Most people will be like, yeah, let's try to keep it under like $15. Like if $15 is what seems reasonable to spend to you, I'm going to give you the best $12 to $14 cigar that I can find, right? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of want to let people decide about that. And whether or not a cigar is worth its price tag is different. It truly is in the eye of the beholder. To me, the value is like, is this flavor profile going to land on the palate? And then when you get to the checkout, that's when you decide if you want to pay the price of admission.
Well, and the reason why I brought that up is because when I was in your shop and you had recommended the Night Shift, which was a tremendous cigar, by the way, and as I was walking around, I had never heard of Plasencia. And something said, buy this cigar, buy a couple of these, and it was the Plasencia Almafuerte, and I had it last night. And it literally, one of those, moments you see where your head gets blown off, because I've always been very much of a Padron fanboy. But I'll tell you what, that Almafuerte knocks on the door of Padron and says, hey, take a look at me. I mean, in my opinion, it's amazing. It was an amazing cigar.
Yeah. That cigar, you can go to Nicaragua and go into the room where they aged the leaf for 10 years. A cedar-lined room. It's beautiful.
Oh,
they pull one of the bales, pull the leaf out, rolled up, and we smoked one of them right there in the room. It's just like one of the best moments of my entire life.
I mean, literally, I took a cigar tool fork, and I had it to the very end, and my wife came in, and she goes, where's the cigar? I said, see this little tiny quarter of an inch? I'm going to finish this all the way down. Yeah. So why don't you, Dave Pantea, we'll put him on the spot.
we knew that this was going to go long, so let's finish with this this question here. Yeah. Which is the ultimate question, I believe.
From Pantea, I'm going to just butcher your name.
Mahmoodian. Pantea Mahmoodian. Yep.
Since you said Cubans are overrated, which cigar is the best there is? I famously avoid answering this question.
I'm sure.
The best, I tell people this all the time because I get to meet people in the Cigars Daily HQ, and typically the conversation goes like this: how long have you been smoking cigars? You're like, oh, I've been smoking cigars for 6 months. And I say, this is amazing. That's great. You're in the best place in your cigar journey, because every amazing cigar you've ever had is still ahead of you. Like the first time you have a cigar and it really blows your mind. Like you take a puff and you're like, whoa, like this is explosive flavor. It satiates every part of my palate. That is yet to happen for you. You just know you enjoy it at this point. So the best cigar there is out there is the one that does that to you. And to me, I've had cigars like that over the years that have done that for me. And I hate it when they're limited edition cigars, but like the Monte Cristo Espada signature is like so good to me. Room 101's 13th anniversary, I still have a few of those. And the 14th anniversary is similarly very good. But if I'm looking for, and especially as my palate changes, I used to be really into mild Connecticut's. And like I said, I've sort of made my way over to stronger, bolder, Maduros. Now, the cigars that are the best ones to me aren't what they were 5 years ago. I still really like mild and medium cigars, but these days, even in the early morning, I'll get there and I want something really punchy, really bold. So here's a few cigars that I go back to commonly. Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust's Sin Compromiso. Amazing, outstanding cigar. The new Diesel Vintage. Rich, bold, just like weird plum sweetness that it just savor when I smoke it. Espinosa's La Raña Oscuro and La Raña Azulejo. Figure out how to spell that one. Both really punchy and very, very good. Oliva's Serie V Maduro. Really rich, dark, strong, bold flavor. Those are just a few of the ones that get me right now. But again, something different for everything.
Well, Tim, I want to, on behalf of Dave and all the barflies in the lounge, I want to thank you so much. And I want to finish with this one comment because I think, and I'll read it, because I think it really, really epitomizes who you are in the industry, what people think of you. And this is from Don George. And Don says, I've been watching CD Live for over 4 years now. My friends and colleagues now come to me for cigar questions. Thank you, Tim, for my college degree in cigars. There's no better. That's just fantastic. I mean, that's just
Thank
amazing.
you, John George. I appreciate that, and that's the great privilege of Cigars Daily is getting to share my love for cigars in a way that like helps people. And
I've got to say one other thing because obviously I've got a fairly big shaving channel, but Dave and I started this channel about 2 months ago, Dave, and it was just to talk about stuff other than shaving and other than that. And when Dave and I had this conversation, I said, I wonder if Tim would be on our show. And we both looked at each other and said, we haven't even gotten to 100 subscribers yet, so we're not even streaming on our own channel yet. We're on our others. And I said, I'll go up and ask him. And you didn't even hesitate. And to me, when somebody has 200,000 subscribers and they see somebody down here with 60 or 80, I'm like, wow, he's going to actually be on our show. And I cannot... And I'll never be able to thank you enough for that because
it's a pleasure amazing. And a privilege for me. Guys, the cigars they call them the great equalizer, right? You can get into a cigar lounge and it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter who you are. Like very suddenly we're all enjoying the same thing and we're all just like there together. It's a beautiful community.
Well, it's funny. When it says Tim, does Tim get shaving tips for his head from Barber Dave? It's funny because when Billy had his hair mistake, I so badly wanted to say, you know what, Billy, come to the shop. I know it's an hour and a half drive, but I will fix it. I promise you, I will fix it. but anyhow, Tim, we've gone way over here, and I know that your earlier today was a little crazy with your IT stuff going on at the office and stuff like that. So I know Tuesdays are normally your lay low day. So for you to be on our show, I really appreciate it, and I know everybody here, whether they were cigar smokers or not, really enjoyed having you with us. And I like I said, from the heart, I cannot thank you enough.
A privilege for me, guys. Thank you both.
Beautiful.
All right, everybody, see us next Tuesday at 6 p.m., and we'll see you down the road.
Night, guys.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.